And hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Glad to have you tonight. Brock unfortunately had to take a bit of leave. We're having a little bit of issues at his house with his son getting sick. Brock, we really hope everything works out well. He did have to end up taking his son to the urgent care. It seems like it might be okay, and we'll find out later and keep everybody in the loop. But for now, you're stuck with me again. You're welcome. So, missed everybody also last week. We did end up taking a little bit of a break. The summer's been a bit rough. Tonight has been a bit rough. It's been one of those definitely a stay-at-home dad kind of week for, I think, Brock and I both, and maybe even for our guest tonight. So we'll get straight to that rather than just rehashing all the garbage you guys are probably already going through as well. So tonight, I'm actually kind of excited, honestly, to bring on our guest, Matt Strain. And I met Matt back in Raleigh at Home Dad Con in 8 years ago, whatever it was. I think it was my first one, if not my second.
It was my first
Raleigh
one
too?
was Raleigh 2.
Okay,
yeah,
so,
my first one
so,
was Raleigh 2 as well.
Yeah. Well, my first one was Raleigh 1. So you were the second one. And I remember, and I will say this, that I came back from lunch at our very specific table that was always full, and some dude was sitting in my seat. Now, I'm not saying that's a problem, but a man's got to eat, as Matt, you well know. So now anybody that's not really familiar with the network, maybe, or maybe you're not one of the members of the network, you probably don't recognize Matt's name. But I think if you are in the network, you absolutely know who Matt is. Matt, you've got a great reputation. I think everybody knows the basics of your story. So we're going to get into a little bit of details about that. But the first thing that I always like to do is to talk about how long you've been an at-home dad, how you found the network, and how many kids you have, what ages they are, and stuff like that. So how long have you been an at-home dad?
A little over 7 years now. I hit 7 years this past March.
Nice.
I have a 7-year-old daughter, and my son turned 4 at the end of April.
Cool.
I was a chef prior to becoming a stay-at-home dad. So when I became a stay-at-home dad, the isolation was really, really like shocking because everyone I knew worked in the food industry. So, they all woke up at the crack of noon. Yeah. And then, they would call me up at like 1 a.m. going, hey, let's hang out. And it's like, I'm awake, but I've got a bottle in my hand.
Yeah.
And I'm not going out anywhere. Yeah. Not that kind
Wrong
of bottle.
kind of bottle.
Yeah. I'm not going out anywhere. And I spent about 2.5 years really, really rough. I mean, really rough. And at some point, my wife heard about a dad's group on Facebook, not the National At-Home Dad Network. It was actually a group called Dads Married to Doctors because my wife is a physician. And she recommended that I join the group, and I did join the group. It wasn't a real good fit for me because most of those guys were all working dads, and I wasn't. I'm still involved with the stay-at-home branch of that group. But while I was in that group, in the very beginning, some random guy named Carl Wilkie made a post in the group saying, hey, this is the last day to get discount registration to come to Home Dad Con in Raleigh.
Nice. And
I thought, And I followed the link and I looked at all the stuff and I'm like, all right, this could either be really cool or really lame. And I'm like, you know what? I want to give it a shot. Like, worst case scenario, it sucks and I know better, but best case scenario, it turns out to be something good. So I text my wife and she's like, we'll talk about it when I get home. And I'm like, it's the last day for discount registration. And she's like, book it now because she loves a good bargain. And I booked my ticket. There was a hurricane that particular year.
Yes, there was.
I ended up with one dad or two other dads who were married to doctors that I knew through that group.
Oh, cool.
Who ended up crashing at my house. One of them was from Florida, and he was planning on coming up with a bunch of other guys, and they all canceled.
Oh.
Because their flights got canceled. And he was like, I'm driving up. And they're like, we can't drive.
Yeah.
And so he didn't have a room because the rooms were all in their name.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I guess I'm not going to be able to go. And I'm like, dude, I got like plenty of room at my house. If you're willing to crash on the couch, you're welcome to stay at my place.
Nice.
It's like a 20-minute ride in.
Yeah.
So I ended up with Nick and Daniel Coben.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel asked first, so he got the guest bed behind me.
Yeah.
And Nick was last minute, so he ended up on the couch.
All right.
But basically, the three of us would wake up every morning, go to the convention, and then come home. And like so many other people, like by the end of the first day, it was holy crap! I found my people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I had paid for registration for Portland the next year before I left the building on Sunday.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask my wife. I'm just like, I'm going. That's where she did her undergrad work, was in Portland, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And I went to culinary school. We met there. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can convince her to come with me.
Yeah.
But and the rest, as they say, was history. I went to Portland, and then the next year I started getting involved in the planning. Mm-hmm. And started doing food and beverage for the convention, because it's what I know how to do.
Yeah, in your experience, for sure.
And then last year, or year before last, in Minneapolis, decided to run for the board of directors and got elected. Mm-hmm. And just haven't stopped since. I mean, it's a great group of guys. I
want to say I may have voted for you, but I don't think you're supposed to say stuff like that, so I'm not going to say it. Just say may have, but yeah, I think it's a good fit. I think it's a good fit.
I would also admit it didn't hurt my chances that I spent the entire convention walking around with homemade salami, homemade pastrami, and homemade bacon, just randomly asking people to put my meat in their mouth.
Right.
So it's a good sales. It's a good campaign promise.
I was there. I remember. Yeah, it was. It's actually, and that is, again, anyone that may not be involved in the network directly, definitely, if you're an at-home dad, get involved. Trust me, you'll never look back. But the other part of it is everybody jokes about having Matt's meats in their mouth, and it's just it's a constant thing. It's great. So, and especially Portland, that was a really big one. And you helped out with the food. Didn't you help on the food with Portland as well, or was that
not at
until
all?
After?
Not at all.
All right.
The first time that I got involved to help was in Orlando.
Okay. All right.
And then I was on board for Minneapolis, and I would have been on board for last year, except it's hard to cater a virtual convention.
Yep. I would have been happy for you to send me food. I've been there. Yeah. I'd give you my address. I'd even paid for it.
Oh, yeah.
But all right, so that's a big part of who I think the network knows you as, and a big part of, I think, personally, that I know you as. But to move a bit beyond that, now we've talked in the past, and you said you're okay with this, and I want to say that before I bring it up so everyone understands. But something that happens with a lot of chefs is you do get into some addictive behaviors. If it's smoking, I mean, I've rarely ever seen a chef outside without a cigarette in their hands. But for a lot of people,
it used to be the only way that you ever got a break.
Yeah, it's the only thing, and then the other part was, unfortunately, drinking. And you said you had an issue with chronic alcoholism, which brought you to, I think, a pivotal moment where you changed your life and have moved from there. And I'd like to talk about how that happened, how that came about, and then into what you're doing now, which I'm kind of excited about.
So shortly after my daughter was born, and I started staying home full time, it began to become abundantly clear to me that behaviors that to me felt completely normal weren't. Apparently, most people don't start drinking at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and don't consume really, really large amounts of alcohol throughout the day. Long story short, now I'm at home taking care of a baby while my wife is at work, and I'm realizing that I can't not drink. Mm-hmm. And like many other alcoholics, you hide it, you don't talk about it, you do everything you can to look like everything's going fine and be on the up and up. And at one point, I had to go for my yearly appointment because I am a type 2 diabetic. Mm-hmm. And my doctor ran my blood work, and there were a couple of red flags in my blood work, and she brought me back in to run a battery of liver tests. And I honestly owe my primary care physician my life. Mm-hmm. She brought me into her office and minced no words. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're going to quit drinking today." And I said, "You mean cut back, right?" And her exact words were, "Well, that depends. Do you intend on seeing your daughter grow up?"
There you go.
And I mean, there was no question. And at that point, I did what was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, which was walk away from it.
Yeah.
You know, my wife will tell you it was miserable. I was a raving asshole for at least a couple of months, but eventually it got better. And I went about 5 years just living off of Diet Dr. Pepper and water and way too much coffee. And that was it. And about 2 or 3 years ago, we were out to dinner with my wife's parents. And my father-in-law is one of those like hardcore wine people, you know, like he can talk for hours and hours about this vineyard or that vineyard. And whenever we would go out to eat, they would always have wine. And at a certain point, you kind of get tired of soda, you know, or water or iced tea. And I'm looking at the menu, and they had a non-alcoholic beer on the menu, and it wasn't O'Doul's, which was the only one I'd ever heard of prior to this.
Yeah, same here.
and I remember tasting one of those back in the early 90s and thinking, oh God, why? and never doing it again. But this, I want to say it was called Erdinger. But it was a European non-alcoholic beer, which they've been doing non-alcoholic beer there for decades.
Oh, really?
For decades. Low alcohol and no alcohol beverages have been around in Europe for ages because they don't drink soda.
Okay.
So literally when they go to lunch, like they have beer with lunch. It's just not, it's not heavily alcohol. You know, in Germany, most of theirs that they're having at lunch are around 1 to 1.2% alcohol. Here in America, you can call it non-alcoholic if it's 0.5 ABV or less. Okay. To put that in perspective, your average glass of fresh squeezed orange juice is going to be around 0.3. You know, a slice of white bread can go as high as 0.4. And there's a lot of kombucha that is significantly higher than 0.5.
Yes.
And
I'm
not
aware of
labeled as
kombucha.
hard, and not labeled as hard kombucha either. But so I tried it, and shock of shocks, it didn't suck. Nice. Like it was actually a decent beer, not a great beer, but I mean, way better than anything I expected. Yeah. So the next step from there was, oh God, I've been missing beer for so long. Now I want to go to the beer store and find like the non-alcoholic beer section. So it started at my local grocery store, and I was drinking a lot of St. Pauli, put out a non-alcoholic beer. Guinness has one called Caliber. Interesting. There was another one called Klaushaller, which in the NA beer community, we refer to that as the gateway beer because Klaushaller makes a dry hopped beer that's relatively easy to find. And it was the first time I found a non-alcoholic beer that wasn't just like, hey, this isn't bad. It was, wait, this is genuinely good. Like I look forward to drinking this. And then I started going to, we've got a big wine store or liquor, not really liquor, because you can't sell liquor in the same store because they're all state run in North Carolina. But we have a store called Total Wine and More. It's a big chain. I'm pretty sure you have them in Georgia as well.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, some places they actually get to sell liquor, but North Carolina, not so much. And I started going in there, and when I first started going, they had one shelf unit, you know, like the one row of shelves that was non-alcoholic. That was
non-alcoholic, okay.
And the bottom two shelves were, you just ignored, because that was like, you know, your Coors and your Miller Sharp and your O'Doul's. And there's one called Penn's.
A Coors non-alcoholic?
They call it Coors Cutter.
Okay. I don't mean to be, you know, throwing people under a bus or criticizing things, but Coors by itself, I think would be, no, I'm not a huge beer person. Beer's not my thing. I'm more of hard liquors and such if I drink. And I think of Coors even, I wouldn't even try it. No. I mean, I wouldn't try it. And Coors non-alcoholic, I can't imagine how bad that must be.
Well, see, and this is the thing. as I started going back, every time I would go, I would grab a new 6-pack of something I hadn't had before.
Yeah.
And some of them were really good. Some of them were not. And again, everybody's taste buds differ. But about a year and a half ago, I stumbled across a Facebook group dedicated to non-alcoholic beer, because there's a Facebook group for
everything. Yeah.
And these guys showed me a world that I had never even dreamed existed. It got to the point where I was going out looking for specific things that I read about there, because it wasn't anymore just like a non-alcoholic beer. Now it was, well, gee, we have a non-alcoholic coffee stout. We have a non-alcoholic IPA. We have a non-alcoholic Gosa and, Irish Reds and everything. Like literally any kind of beer that any craft brewery is making, I promise you there's a non-alcoholic brewery that's doing the same thing somewhere.
Wow, cool.
So then the pandemic hit. And going out shopping became not necessarily a good thing.
Yep.
And the Total Wine they were doing curbside, but I made a couple of purchases curbside without being able to like read the bottles and look at them. And there were a couple of terrible missteps and errors where like I got a 6-pack of something that I couldn't get through one bottle of it.
Right.
And like gave it away to people and they couldn't get through
it's
one
like,
bottle.
Here, this is awful. You should have it.
I won't get into specifics because I don't want to talk bad about any of the other breweries, because again, on this non-alcoholic beer page, there are people who rave about that exact beer because taste is completely subjective. What I love, somebody else might think is horrible.
Yeah.
And vice versa. But as I'm on this page, this one brewery keeps getting brought up over and over and over again, and it's called Athletic Brewing. And they're based out of Connecticut. And like most of what you hear is people complaining that every time they try to buy it, they're sold out. And I'm like, okay, hold on.
That sounds good. Yeah, that sounds like
I'm going on their website to look, because that's the other beauty of non-alcoholic beers. It's like ordering Coca-Cola. Like the UPS man will drop that right on your doorstep. It's awesome. You don't even have to leave the house.
That sounds incredible. I don't even drink beer, and just the thought of being able to like, well, just bring it to my house. Oh yeah, here's your beer. All right. Yeah, I like it. So anyway. So when I was looking into it, they had like 3 flagship beers. They had a golden ale, they had an IPA, and they had a stout that was called All Out. You had Run Wild, you had Upside Dawn, and then you had All Out Stout. And you had those, and then they were doing like seasonal beers. And they had like a double hopped hazy IPA that was one of their spring beers that like it would become available and would be sold out 5 minutes later. Like it was like trying to get concert tickets. You had to be there at the right moment. Yeah.
And little by little over the course of the pandemic, I started drinking more and more of their beer, and I was still checking out other breweries. But as time went by, I was finding that most of the other non-alcoholic breweries had at least 1 or 2 beers that I thought were really good. But everything across the board that I tried from Athletic was really good. Like, even if it wasn't to my taste, like a great example is they have a beer called Cerveza Atletica, and they label it as a copper lager. The fact is, I don't like lager. Like, I've never been a fan of lagers or pilsners. That's not my thing. I like IPAs. I like sours. I like brown ales. I like stouts.
The lagers are the thicker beers, right? Is that how it?
Budweiser labels itself as a lager, but it's actually closer to a pilsner.
Okay.
Your lagers are those classic, like, your German beer.
Okay. All right.
Like a Grolsch would be a lager.
Okay. It sounds like it. I have to say, if I ordered a Grolsch, I would expect that to be, someone says, well, that's a lager. And I'd be like, I can just tell. So it just fits. So
But
anyway, so before you were so rudely interrupted,
but it's not even, it's not a style that I enjoy that much.
Mm-hmm.
But even as I'm drinking it, I can admit, okay, it's a lager. It's a really good lager. I mean, it's still a lager, though. I mean, I wouldn't turn it down, but I'm not going to go out of my way to buy more.
Right.
So as the pandemic is going on, I'm getting bored, like all of us were. And more and more, I'm starting to rely on the online community that I'm a part of through the National At-Home Dad Network and some of the other guys that I know through the network and all of these other things. And I'm talking about these different non-alcoholic beers. And then right before the convention last year, one of the last public things I did before lockdown was I went to a dad convention called Dad 2.0, which is a convention that links companies with bloggers and podcasters and influencers and all that type of thing. And I've never once been a part of that community in any way, shape, or form. I went because I had come up with this harebrained idea to do a monthly webinar series for the National At-Home Dad Network for free. And we had an extra ticket and they're like, we need somebody to take it. And I'm like, well, I can drive to DC and I'll be in a room full of hundreds of bloggers and influencers. I bet you I could find some people willing to talk for free. And that was why I went. But while I was there, I started to realize that I actually had something to say. And it just kind of ruminated around in my brain for a little while. And right before DadCon at Home, which we did back in October, usually for the convention, I take like a week. I show up early and enjoy a couple of days beforehand and the rest of it. And my wife had already arranged to have that time off of work so I could leave town. And then I wasn't going to be leaving. And I explained to her that, what I'd really like to do is just hop on my motorcycle and just go drive up the Blue Ridge Parkway and spend a couple of days on my motorcycle in the mountains, just going through the woods and enjoying the quiet and getting away from the kids and the family and having some me time.
Yes.
And in the time of COVID, it was about as safe as you could be. I mean, it's hard to not socially distance in a helmet at 60.
Exactly. Yeah. You're
And
pretty much on your own, fortunately. Yeah.
And being on my own with my own thoughts, I came up with this really neat idea. And I did a little research and I started a new Instagram account with a new handle. And I created a Facebook page, which I still have yet to do anything with. But, I made sure that I got the name of the page and I got the Gmail address so that I could take care of it. But the idea was that the idea behind it was Daddy is not drinking. Because a lot of people drink. A lot of people drink. And especially during the pandemic.
Yes.
There were a lot of people who were drinking more than they normally did.
Absolutely.
Because which makes sense. I mean, it was stressful. It was hard for everybody. And I get that. But I wanted to put something out there that showed that, you can still be a parent and not start talking about how, daddy needs wine or daddy needs whiskey, daddy needs a beer after this hard day. Well, daddy needed a beer and the beer I wanted was a good non-alcoholic one. And part of what I started doing after that was I started reviewing beers on the Daddy's Not Drinking Instagram account. And, just why not? Just to put the information out there. And being how I had worked for years as a chef, I've got a pretty good palate, if I do say so myself.
I will agree.
So I'm able to talk about different flavors that like possibly some other people don't pick up. And I thought, hey, it's kind of a niche. Let's see what happens. And I was doing it and people were responding. And, again, not some huge following, but like in a period of about 6 months, I got up to about 150 people that were paying attention. And it was kind of neat. And at some point, of all people, Brock, your partner, sent me a text one day and he's like, dude, you got to stop doing that. And I'm like, stop doing what? And he's like, you got to stop tagging all of these breweries and giving them all this free publicity. And I'm like, well, why. Like, I really like their beer. I want more people to buy it. Like, the more people who buy good non-alcoholic beer, the more stores and restaurants and bars that will carry it, and the easier it will be for me to find it.
Exactly.
And Brock says, no, what you need to understand is there are people that they pay or compensate for doing that. And I laughed and I said, come on, dude, like, anybody gives a crap about me and the 150 people that like bother to pay attention. And let's be honest, 30 of those are probably bots for all I know, you know? I mean, it's not like I'm doing background. I'm just like, ooh, look, somebody's following me.
Yeah, right. I don't care who it is. It can be bots.
And I just kind of blew it off and didn't think about it. And then it started eating at me. And one day I was at the gym and I'm on the treadmill. And I have my phone out because Athletic had just dropped a new beer, and I'm ordering beer, you know, on the treadmill. It's like what you do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And right after I order it, I'm looking around the site, and there's a link to their ambassador program. And I click on the ambassador program, and it's really intimidating because Athletic Brewing, Athletic is not just a name. Most of the ambassadors of this group are like hardcore athletes.
Oh, really?
And by hardcore athletes, I mean, literally there were people last weekend and it was like, you know, we have an athletic check-in with what you did with your weekend. There were people responding things like, oh, I did 100-mile gravel race on my bicycle.
Oh, or man.
You know, one guy did a 5-day segmented running race that started in one state and went over the Moab Desert and ended somewhere else. And it was like, I think 150 or 175 miles in like 5 days.
Yeah.
And he won.
Nice.
Like he took first, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
Like, so as I'm looking at this, I'm like, there's no way. Like, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I got a gut. You know, there's a reason I'm at the gym. It's because I am not in prime shape. I'm just trying to like maintain. And the more I think about it, I'm like, you know what? Why not? What's the worst thing that could happen? I fill out the application and they say, no, thanks.
Yeah.
So I fill out the application. And, you know, I fill in my name and my information, and they ask these questions like, why do you want to be an ambassador for Athletic? And I'm like, well, I really like your beer. Like, it's really great beer. And I spend a lot of time telling people all about it. And, you know, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and it's really great to be able to drink a beer in the middle of the day and not have to worry about being able to drive your kid to urgent care if they need it.
Right.
You know, one of the jokes that I make is it's beer for dad when dad's on duty.
Yeah, which is a huge thing.
Yes, I said duty.
Well, it is a big thing too with a lot of people, and like we've already talked about with the pandemic, but just the fact that a lot of us have that one thing that we want, and I think for most men it's probably a beer. We're, you know, I'm not going to say for everybody, but especially when you're grilling or something like that, you don't want anything hard. You just want to kind of, I want a little bit, and that ability to keep working. You know, to keep doing your job, because this job doesn't stop. There's no place where, I mean, I didn't have cold medicine like NyQuil for probably 10 years. And you just going to suffer through it. I mean, there's no, like you said, what happens if urgent care, if someone falls, you know, just jumps off the couch like an idiot, which I'll just say all my kids are idiots.
Day.
Right.
Don't
jump off the couch, bump. Are you doing that again? And a broken arm or something like that, or something small happens in an instant, and you can't relax that much. You can't get, realistically, you can't, I will say you don't want to be drunk in this job. And I think everybody would agree with that. But I love that idea of, I'm still going, but I've reached a point where it's beer o'clock in the afternoon, and I need either to have a beer or have a cup of coffee, because I don't know which way this day is going to go. But having the ability to enjoy a beer, you know, and which is great. And you mentioned the coffee lager, I think, or no, the coffee IPA,
coffee stout.
Yeah, you see how much I know about beer. Sorry, but that type of moment in the day, and being able to go ahead and take care of yourself in that way. Because for me, taking that moment, I'm huge into self-care. I love the idea of it, and I practice it as much as I can. And having that moment of, oh no, I'm at my wit's end. The isolation or the job or the relentlessness of it all, whatever it might be, that hits you on a daily basis. So having the ability to step back and like, I'm just going to drink this, and I'm not going to be impaired. I'm not going to be bothered. I'm going to have something that's delicious and that has, these multi layers of taste that I enjoy. This is fantastic. I love it. Yeah. I love the idea of it.
Well, it's funny, in the application, they ask, several questions about, what do you like about the beer? Mm-hmm. One of the questions was, what athletic pursuits do you follow? And I literally said, I like to hike, because it's true. I do really enjoy, I really enjoy hiking. Over the course of the pandemic, I learned to forage for wild mushrooms. Mm-hmm. And I've begun taking my daughter out with me, and she's now gotten to where she can identify one or two of them. Nice. And you'd be shocked at how much more willing your daughter is to eat a mushroom if she found it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
That's way cool.
Yeah, brought that home. But,
I mentioned that, I foraged for mushrooms, and I said, other than that, the most athletic thing I do is chase at the time, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old around or a 3-year-old all over the house all day long.
Yeah. And if you see, for me, they would be like, what athletic things do you follow? And I'd be like, you mean like on TV? What? Because I watch soccer. Does that count?
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah. No, go ahead.
They asked, what do you think you could bring to the table? And one of the things that I said was, I really think that I can reach out to a market that you're overlooking. And that is specifically stay-at-home dads, but stay-at-home parents in general, because as a stay-at-home dad, sooner or later, you're going to have to talk to the stay-at-home moms, because they're the ones you bump into every day at pickup, drop off, practice, and everything else. Yep. And I'm like, stay-at-home parents in general. Mm-hmm. And I submitted it, and I got a form email response saying, we only bring aboard new ambassadors 3 to 4 times a year, but we will certainly keep your application on file and consider it. And that was the end of it as far as I was concerned. Yeah. Literally, I'm just like, they've turned me down. Oh, well. And I went back to buying good beer and drinking good beer. And this was in January of this past year. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to April. It is literally April 1st, April Fool's Day. And I'm on the treadmill, and my phone starts blowing up with emails. And I open it up, and there's like 4 emails in a row from Athletic. And my first thought is, oh crap, does this mean my delivery is going to be late?
Yeah.
And I open the first ones, and it says that, welcome aboard. We'd love to have you as an ambassador. Yeah. And my first thought is, I'm being punked. This is April Fool's Day. Like one of my, some Brock found out that I filled out the application, and he's just messing with me now. Right. Yeah. By the second email, there's legal documents at the end, like for me to sign into a contract with them. Nice. And so I watch, I finish my run on the treadmill while watching the 30-minute orientation video. And I come home, and I talk to my wife about it a little bit, and we look over the paperwork. And, there were a couple of questions that I had, and I actually called, and somebody answered the phone and was more than happy to answer all my questions. Yeah, nice. One of my main ones was, they said that, I can't enter into any type of agreement with any other breweries. And I'm like, well, I don't have a problem with that, but does this mean I can't review beer that isn't Athletics beer? Yeah. And they're like, oh, no, please. We believe that the more good non-alcoholic beer that's out there, the better it is for everybody.
Everybody. Yeah.
They're like, you just can't become an ambassador for somebody else. You got to be a one brand beer guy.
Which makes sense.
And I'm like, I can do that. So I sign everything and I send it away. And, couple of weeks later, they sent me my official ambassador shirt.
Nice. I like it.
And it's a really nice, comfy shirt too. But I got my ambassador shirt, and they explained the program. And basically what I do as an ambassador is exactly what I was doing already for free. Nice. now I get compensated.
Yeah.
So
now we talked about that a little bit. You're not actually getting a paycheck regularly or anything like that. So what's the compensation
I don't get a regular paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
What we have a program called Brand Champ.
Mm-hmm.
And Brand Champ encourages the brand ambassadors to do different activities, and then you submit them. So, for instance, just a general social media post that's about athletic beer or athletic
mm-hmm.
brewing, you can do 2 of those a week, and it's worth like this many points. Athletic is very, very active in charity.
Mm-hmm.
They do a lot of charity work throughout the year, but the biggest one that they do is their 2 for the Trails program,
mm-hmm.
which is 2% of the net profits every year goes directly into a trust fund. And all of that money goes to trail maintenance for hiking and biking trails across the world in every market that they're in. So cool. At this point, we're now doing 2 for the Trails in America, Canada, the UK, and Australia is the newest place that we've begun like supplying beer to.
Mm-hmm.
UK and Australia have both been in like the last few months, and they're thrilled to get their hands on it because the non-alcoholic beer page has people from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of people really mad because they kept hearing about athletic and couldn't get it.
Yeah.
But I get points if I go hike a trail and I actually clean while I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
So now whenever me and the kids go out for a hike, because we've got several hiking trails in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We just bring a garbage bag with us and pick up garbage as we go. And you can do that twice a week. I will get points for being on a podcast and mentioning Athletic Brewery.
Really?
Yeah, the whole idea.
Well, you're welcome because we weren't going to pay you.
Well, thank you. Tell you. No. Now I will say, just recently, as a matter of fact, last Sunday, I did an activity where I did actually get paid cash.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
This is not a regular thing, but Athletic Brewing is the official beer of the Spartan races. Which I don't know if you're familiar with, but that's that like insane obstacle course through the mud thing. Yep.
Yeah.
We're also the official beer of the Ironman.
Oh, really? I did not know that. Yeah, that's cool.
So we tend to be at all of these events, and we're there just giving away free beer to anybody that's out there that wants to try a non-alcoholic beer because that's how we got started. Bill, the founder, was in finance in New York City and was living a very active lifestyle and doing road racing and running and biking and triathlons and all that kind of stuff. And he and his wife were working really hard on their health. They were moving to a more plant-based diet. They were doing all of this exercise. And the more he looked at it, the more he realized that the one thing that didn't gel with his lifestyle was alcohol. Mm-hmm. So he quit, and then he missed beer. And so he tried all the non-alcoholic beer he could find and didn't like any of it. So being who he is, he went and bought like every brewing textbook he could find and probably was the first person who ever read them with the express purpose of figuring out how to brew beer but not get alcohol.
Yeah.
He and the head brewer worked on this for 2 years. It began in an empty warehouse using like 5-gallon Gatorade coolers and home brewing equipment.
Nice. Yeah.
Eventually it moved to somebody's garage.
Stepping up in the world. They
would brew all week long, hand bottle and cap everything. And on the weekends, Bill would load his car up with ice chests full of bottles of beer and go to any race he could find and just stand at the finish line giving away beer.
There you go.
And the philosophy for Athletic has always been tasting is believing. Like most people, when you say non-alcoholic beer, they remember that O'Doul's from years ago. And they're like, I can't do it.
Absolutely.
And our whole thing is put a can in somebody's hand, let them taste it. And that tends to end the argument.
Yeah. You're proving that it's not what it was. That's right there. So
this past weekend, there was a Spartan Trifecta event in Fayetteville, North Carolina, right outside of Fort Bragg. So needless to say, there was a large crowd of people who were looking to run and prove things. It is insane. I've never been to one of these before. There are people that are doing this race in times that just I cannot wrap my head around.
Yeah.
The top male runner did a 3.5 mile race with 20 obstacles in it in less than 29 minutes.
Man, not if I was on fire. I mean, not if there was a dog chasing me. There's no way.
Not a chance. Well, there's 3 levels of competition for the Spartan races. You have the elites, who are sponsored people that are actually racing for money.
Yeah.
You have the age division group, which is the aspiring elites.
Okay.
They run by age division, and they're actually like tracked, and they win medals, and they keep track of their rankings throughout like the country and the rest of it. And then you have the open division. And the open division, you're doing it for bragging rights. You're doing it so that you get a T-shirt that says finisher. You get a Spartan medal.
I was going to say the Spartan medal, which is
at some point
cool.
You get to throw a spear, which is really cool. I mean, that's one of the obstacles is they actually have like a target, and you have to throw like a Greek style javelin into the target before you can move on.
Nice.
So they were looking for somebody to cover the event because this particular weekend, there were events happening in several places in North Carolina. So our regional sales rep was handling one. And then they had the Spartan race, and they're like, we need people to cover Saturday and Sunday. And somebody immediately jumped up and said, well, I can do Saturday. And they still didn't have somebody for Sunday. And I'm like, well, what do you need? And they're like, we just need you to stand underneath this tent and give beer away and talk to people. And I'm like, oh, hey, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I said, sure, I'll do it. And they said, well, this is an actual paying gig. And I said, oh, that's even better. And basically, for doing that event, I think I was there. Well, technically, I was on duty from 8 in the morning till 6. I think I got there at 7:30 and left at about 6:30 because I'm a stay-at-home dad. So I just leave to get everywhere early because I'm used to having kids slow me down.
That's right.
And overall, I paid $100. $100 to hang out for the day. Obviously all the beer I could drink, and it was a hot day. And
I was going to say, on a day like that, and you're hot and you're out there even though you've got the tent, I know you weren't inside the tent, were you, the whole time? It was outside hawking people. Were you staying inside?
We were outside the whole time. Like when I say tent, I mean, like I had that pavilion to keep me out of the rain canopy. With the open sides. Like it was a canopy, not a tent, not a real tent. But I went out and did it and had an absolute blast. And it was really, it was a different experience because, and again, I've never served in the military. I had a couple of friends who did. I'm not incredibly familiar with the culture, but I know the stereotypes. And I will say that there were a whole lot of guys that were part of the military crowd who would come by really excited. And then I would mention the word non-alcoholic beer. And they would look at me like I just asked them to drink acid. But several of them decided to give it a shot. And not one person who decided to try it looked at me and went, this is awful. Every one of them took a sip and went, okay, hold on. This is really good. And, for that one, I had a golden ale. I had an IPA, a classic American IPA. And then I had a double hopped hazy New England IPA.
Yeah, it sounds perfect.
The 3 is my favorite.
Sounds like a perfect day.
And I handed out beer all day.
Yeah.
And and it was wonderful.
And you got to talk to people, which I know you have difficulty talking to people. So I'm glad you stepped out of your shell. And
I got to talk to people. More importantly, and this is the part that, you as a stay-at-home dad appreciate, is I got away. Yeah. I actually left on Friday and drove out to Fayetteville. I was originally planning on taking my motorcycle, but they were predicting rain all weekend, so I didn't.
Yeah.
So I took the minivan out and, found a cheap hotel room because I'm by myself. So it's not like I need luxury. I just need a place to sleep with a shower and, that's vaguely clean.
Yeah.
Got there Friday, hung out for a little bit, did a little walking around town and then went to bed, woke up Saturday, I won't say Saturday morning. I had an alarm set to get me up early because I wanted to like get a bunch of things done. And I remember snoozing the alarm. And I remember at some point getting up and being in the bathroom and looking at my watch and going, that can't be right. And then my wife called me and she's like, what are you doing? And I went, I just got up. And she said, fuck you. It was 11:15.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It's probably
nice.
the longest I have slept in years.
Yeah, I was say, well, you've been a stay-at-home dad for 7 years, right? 7, 8?
So probably
seven, 8 years.
7 years. But I slept in, and then I hopped in the van. It was still raining, but I went out and I found a national forest, or a state forest, and found some hiking trails and went back hiking, looking for mushrooms. I found a whole tree that was covered in beautiful golden and white oyster mushrooms that the rain had completely destroyed. They were just all like limp and rotting. So I was really disappointed, but I did come home with like a couple pounds of wood ear mushrooms and, 2 or 3 nice lobster mushrooms. So, I mean, it wasn't for nothing.
Mm-hmm. And you were out there and you got the time.
Yeah,
so
I got to hang out in the woods for the day. Never a bad day in the woods is still a good day.
It is.
At least as far as I'm concerned.
Indeed. Well, Matt, I got to tell you, I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And I'm really glad that you've got this chance to be a brand ambassador. And I will say too, it's a little bit inspirational for anybody I think that might be looking at something and you didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know what was going to come of it. But like you said, what have I got to lose? Let's go ahead and put in the application. I'll say you seem to me in the time that I've known you, not really the kind of person that would balk at a new experience. You seem like you'd be like, well, yeah, let's try this. What's the worst that can happen? But I know a lot of people have that fear, have that issue of, well, what about rejection, whatever else. And I love that you have that because one, you can help your kids, of course, and your family to grow up and understand that. But two, in a situation like this, to show it where, and I don't mean this offensively, but just like what you said, this is athletic brewing, who's all for the athletes who are like top tier people that you and I are looking at like, wow, you should be on TV or something, man. They should be paying you $1 million.
Some of them are.
Right. Okay.
Some of them are.
Having that, you're not quite there, but you went ahead and put yourself out there. And I really love that you did that. And I want to say for anybody that's looking at something like that in our lives, when we have something as an at-home dad or an at-home parent, there's so much that we already have to do. And there's so little that we get to do for ourselves that we love, that we enjoy. Taking care of my kids. I love taking care of my kids. I love cooking for them. I like cleaning with them. I like teaching them all these great things, but none of it's for me really. It's that long-term investment to make good people in the world and all that. So I love
we all need that me time.
Yes. And that ability to do it with something you love so much. And obviously you're good at it.
And that's the main key that I really think makes the difference is that it's really easy to be a brand ambassador if you're doing it for a company or a product that you actually genuinely and truly love.
Yes. That
you genuinely and truly like. I talk about how Athletic did, their 2 for the Trails program. For the month of June, which was Pride Month, they got together with a LGBTQI professional rock climber and her partner and had the 2 of them design their perfect beer. It ended up being a single strata hopped IPA made with blood orange. So like a nice citrusy, juicy hop with blood orange on top of it, put into an IPA. And they let them name it. They let them design the can and everything else. The name of the brew was Rainbow Wall, which was her favorite climbing site in Nevada.
Yeah.
Also mixed in with, of course, the rainbow for pride and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But what was more impressive is that Athletic did a full run of this beer and sold it. All of Athletic's beers are the exact same price on their website. Doesn't matter whether it's a limited beer or one of their flagship beers. It's $12.99 a 6-pack, which is about what you would pay for any other craft beer. And more importantly, if you buy 2 or more 6-packs, shipping is free.
Oh, there you go.
So literally for $26 plus tax, someone will drop a 12-pack at your front door or side door, depending on where UPS delivers to you. But either way, it'll show up and you don't have to worry about it. Athletic made $0 off of that entire run of beer. 100% of all proceeds from that beer went directly to a nonprofit organization called Athlete Ally, which is a nonprofit that advocates for the LGBTQI plus community being able to have their rights protected in the world of sports.
Nice.
Of all kinds. Athlete Ally works with like high school on up as far as sports. And it's a really, really cool organization. In February, they had 2 of their Black brewers collaborate together to come up with a beer for Black History Month. They created a beer that they called Soul Sour. It was a blueberry, lemon, and mango sour. So BLM.
Yeah, got it. Took me a second.
Yeah, subtle. Black Lives Matter. Yeah, real subtle. But they donated 100% of the proceeds from that beer to a group called Beer Culture that helps with education and certifications for people of color in the brewing industry to help them move up in the world. On Veterans Day, they released an IPA called At Ease. And they split the profits of that one to 2 different veteran organizations. One of them, I believe, was helping with mobility issues, and the other one was helping with reintegration just back into civilian society. But they do this kind of charity work all the time. And the community really, really responds to it. And it's nice being able to work for a company that, you feel good about being with them.
Yeah, they're doing something in the community.
Since I became an ambassador, one of the weirdest things that has begun happening is that I now get random Instagram messages on a regular basis from products that I've never used, never heard of, or anything else, saying, hey, we're looking for brand ambassadors. Message us here. The last one I got was for some company that makes yoga clothing. I've never done yoga. Now, I mean, in theory, I'm sure I could sign up and, and shill for them. But that's not who I am. I mean, like, I'm not going to be able to do that because I don't really care. With athletic, I care. And like literally, when I say that they do craft beer, I mean, the 2 beers that I've had this evening while we're recording, the first one was one of our pilot beers, which is the Reed's Red IPA, which is a red IPA. All of these silver cans are their limited runs. They do a lot of single hop IPAs. Chocolate cherry stout was in one of those cans. The maple brown ale, that type of thing. And the one that I'm drinking right now is literally my summer favorite. This is the Downwinder Gosa.
Okay.
It is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gosa. It's a sour beer.
I was literally going to ask you what kind of beer is it, because I thought Gosa was just what it was called, but it's a Gosa.
Yeah,
I am aware of sour beers, though.
I would say Gosa is the style. It's a particular style of sour beer. Usually when you come across a Gosa, it's been fruited. They did not fruit this one at all. It is literally just sour beer with a sea salt finish.
That's all you get. No, it sounds interesting.
And it is one of the most refreshing things out there. Now you'll notice I'm sipping it. This is not a pounding beer. This is not for after mowing the lawn. This is for sitting on the beach or that type of thing and sipping on. At this point right now, they're about to start doing their summer fruit stand series. So they just released, to the club members, so Athletic has a subscription club, which is the best / most expensive part. You sign up, literally it's $25. And basically you pick any 2 6-packs of their flagship beers, which you get out of that, you have a golden ale, a stout, an IPA, the hazy IPA, and the copper lager.
Mm-hmm.
You pick any 2 6-packs of that, and once a month they just mail you those 2 6-packs and charge you $25.
Yeah,
which is convenient.
Like a standard,
you automatically get it,
like with any subscription. The box,
right.
That's always a good
but
idea.
more importantly, once you become a member of the Athletic Beer Club, anytime they do a special release, the members get access to it usually 24 to 48 hours before it becomes available to the general public.
Cool.
So there's a lot of beers that like get offered that never show up to the general public because like they show up and everybody's like, "Ooh, that looks good. I think I'll just buy it all."
Yeah.
So today they made available the first of the fruit stand beers, which is going to be a raspberry sour.
Okay.
Later in the summer, the next one is going to be a blackberry Berliner Weiss, which is a German style of sour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the last one that they're doing is a new one for this year, and it is a tropical sour.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't go into much detail other than tropical. So I'm guessing probably mango, pineapple kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's always something interesting to buy on the site.
Yeah. And you got a lot of flavors, a lot of assorted things. It's a huge variety, especially with the taste being there. So
right now on the site, I'm trying to think. You have the 5 flagships, you have the Downwinder. Now for members, there's a single hop IPA as well as the raspberry sour, both of which should be available in the next like 24 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like 8 different beers from one brewery that you have access to at one time.
That's cool.
It gets expensive, I think,
or overwhelming,
Well, I think right now in my fridge, I have somewhere around 13 to 15 different athletic beers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that they're doing craft beer, like, they're doing these kind of flavors. There's also other breweries that are just doing crazy things. I've got 2 cans in the back of my fridge from a brewery called Barrel Brothers that's in Northern California.
Mm-hmm.
Now they make regular beer, or as I call it, they make leaded beer. But they've also like begun dipping their toe into the non-alcoholic beer market because it is the fastest growing market for beer in America.
Yeah.
In the last year, the NA market has gone up by 38%.
Nice.
A 38% increase in sales in 1 year is freaking huge.
It's huge. Yeah.
But Barrel Brothers did a 3-year barrel aged Morello cherry sour.
All right. Sounds good.
So it is amazing.
Yeah.
It is absolutely amazing. There will be at least 1 can of it coming with me to Home DadCon because I promised people I would bring one for the beer swap.
All right.
Well, I gotta tell you, another company.
I really appreciate you being on the night, but we are running out of time. And I apologize to cut you off, but yeah, go ahead.
No problem. One thing that I do want to do before I go is that if anybody is interested in looking at what Athletic Brewing has to offer, you can go to our website, just Google Athletic Brewing Company. It'll pop right up. If you find something that you do like, by all means, put it in your cart. At the bottom of the cart, there's a section to put in a discount code. As an ambassador, I have my own discount code. So if they enter M Strain, so MSTRAIN and the number 20, it'll get you 20% off of the first order that you make.
Cool. That
so suddenly instead of $25, it's like $20 for a 12-pack being delivered to your house.
Yeah, anything you save, that's great. That's great.
Brock, how's everybody doing?
Good. We're here at the hospital in the room. Are you guys still recording?
Yeah, we were just finishing
wrapping up. You came in just as I was giving out my discount code.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just finished.
No, we're still recording. So I just want to say one more time, thank you, Matt, for being here tonight. I appreciate everything you've told us about Athletic, and again, hope people do get an opportunity to use that code. We definitely want our thoughts also to go out to Brock and his family, and hope everything is okay there.
Also,
and give everybody thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. So,
and also I want to thank Brock one more time, because I would not be an ambassador if he had not pushed me to fill out that application. No two ways about it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys.
Have
a good night.
Well,